All right. Well, let's get started. I'd like to call the Bristol Selectboard meeting to order on Monday, November 28th, 2022. Review agenda for addition, removal, or adjustment of any items. Any changes, Val?
No, but
Okay.
the agenda item regarding the grant authorization request for the BRIC program will be modified just slightly.
All right. So number 5.
Yeah,
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Number 2, overview of Zoom meeting operations and procedures, rules for participation. Please mute your microphones and be recognized by myself, the chair, if you wish to speak. Let's do a public forum. It's 5 minutes for anyone in the public to discuss anything that's not on the agenda for this evening. Anybody wish to speak?
Are you here for that, or are you for still? You're on the agenda.
All righty.
Okay.
I see no one else in Zoom land. Okay, fantastic. Department head roundtable, 5 minutes per person. Let's start with Meredith. I see her on tonight for the Recreation Department.
Great. Thank you, Ian. So we're coming up into the busy holiday period. We'll start out with this Friday being the memory tree lighting, which will start at 6. We'll have Chris Hamill and his 5th and 6th graders who are in his choir group be singing a few songs, and we'll be reading the names of the honorees and a poem that goes along with that. And then December 9th is our candy cane hunt in the park with SD Ireland and Santa Claus. And then we'll have story time on the 16th, I think. And then on the 18th is our trolley rides. And then other than that, the Holly Hall and Howden Hall have been booked up. Every weekend, there's something that's going on in both buildings, which is pretty exciting. We haven't seen that rented out since COVID, or before COVID. So pretty exciting stuff. Very busy. Freddie is our new rec coordinator. He's been great. Taylor and the hub is just awesome. They've seen up to 50 kids at times after school, so the success there is happening. So yeah, Bristol Rec Department, hub, and pottery studio is just busy as if it was normal. So.
Fantastic.
What's going on with the clay studio?
It's just the clay studio and all the programs are full. Motlock did add a Women's Wednesday, and that took right off. And we have after school pottery Tuesdays and Thursdays, and adult pottery Wednesday evenings and Thursday evenings. So pretty busy over there.
Wow. Thanks.
Great. I'd like to thank the rec department for doing the public swim again during break.
Yeah.
I took advantage of that with my kids and my wife Ray, and that was lots of fun. It was fun to be able to use the pool again after quite a long time of not being able to use that pool, or not being able to get access to it. So that was great. And it seemed like it was pretty popular. We went very early, so there were fewer kids, but then when we were wrapping up our hour, it started to get pretty busy.
Yeah, nobody really wanted to do the 8:15 time slot, and I mean,
why would they not want to do 8:15 in the morning?
One way to wake up.
I'm there at 5:50 in the morning.
But that was great.
well, you are.
Any questions for Meredith? All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to Bruce, Police Department.
Good evening. So the our new database that we've had for a few months now, we still, or at least I shouldn't say I am still learning it. A few hiccups, trying to get it where I can generate some kind of report so I can give you a better idea of what we do each month. So for the month of October, we had 389 incidents. Our incidents involve everything that we do that requires some kind of police action. The old database, the past couple of weeks, I haven't been able to get into it, and I'm working with IT. I'm not sure what I did to get myself locked out of it, but there's a couple of animal complaints that I need to get into the old database so we can address those issues. Potentially one with a vicious dog complaint, but we keep working away at it. Hopefully within the next few months, we should know how to work the new database properly, and I'll have luck getting into the old one. Other than that, it's business as usual.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Bruce this evening?
And things are now fully staffed,
Yes.
full department. What's the status of the new vehicle?
The new vehicle, we're still waiting for the letters and a couple pieces of equipment that normally would take a week to get here. We're still waiting. But there's lights in it. And like I said, it's just buying equipment and getting things delivered now. A little bit longer than usual.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Bruce. Eric, Public Works Department.
You're a pal.
There he is. Perfect.
Yeah, not much to report. I think I told you guys last time, we finished up the Knox Road grant. Paperwork is almost completed to be submitted in. Trying to get the road shaped up before they freeze. Just routine maintenance now, getting things up to snuff for plowing and ready to go. So that's mainly it.
How was it with the first snowfall that we had with the crew?
Good. Peter and Pete both had good reviews on their training, so to speak. So now it's just a matter of waiting for the next storm, but for themselves to see how they do, and we can go from there.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. All right, any questions for Eric this evening? All right, thank you very much. And let's see, Sharon is away this evening, and I don't see anyone else on.
I have a report from Jill. They're not able to tune in tonight,
All
and
right, Water Department.
yes, she reports that the radio upgraded will be completed Wednesday. The generator is working well with the VFD and pump 2. They should be able to get the VFD for pump 1 installed in coming weeks. The Q4 fourth quarter water read starts mid-December and will begin touchpad notices.
Okay, that's great. That's good to hear about the VFD. I know that's taken a little longer than they thought. Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on. Item 6. Yeah. Regular business. 1, Munsell Avenue Sidewalk Scoping Study. Discussion of the preferred alternative with Dan Malik of DuBois and King. And Dan is on this evening. Where's Dan?
I'm here,
There's
Ian.
Dan. Hello there. Thank you for joining us via Zoom.
Thank you.
And if people aren't familiar, this is a sidewalk scoping study for Munsell Avenue. Dan has joined us before in presenting previous iterations of the study, and I believe this will be the final one before it's delivered, right, to the town, in terms of your final presentation.
We are slated to have one final once everything is delivered.
Okay.
The real purpose of this is to a little more concisely, and thank you all, good evening, focus on the identification by the select board of a preferred alternative that will be explored a little further in the report than the other 4 or so alternatives that we presented to you all on September 26th.
Okay, great.
And so what we'll do tonight is briefly step through some of that September 26th presentation. But since then, 2 good things have happened. The first is that we've taken a public survey of those alternatives that generated over 60 responses. And we also prepared an evaluation matrix with some detail about both the responses to the surveys as well as some of the technical feasibility and cost items. So I'll be able to show those results tonight and that matrix tonight. And what we'd like this evening is from the board for the minutes of tonight's meeting to reflect which alternative is identified as preferred. It's not a binding, well, this is what the town will do kind of thing. It's simply so the report can go into greater depth on that alternative in terms of cost estimating, permitting, and potentially some more graphic detail if we see fit.
Okay.
And so we'll get right into it. If I may
Yeah,
share my screen, am I set
Yep,
up? for
you should
that,
be able to
Bill?
share.
Yeah, you're co-host now.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you see the cover there?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and so at times I'll be looking over in this direction, whatever that is for you, because that's the screen that I have this on. And I think if I can. Yep. Just briefly again, the scoping study is part of a process that looks at technical feasibility. It tries to generate quite a bit of public input into the process. It doesn't mean that the town's committing itself to do anything, but it's a very important part of the planning stage of any project. And it's what agencies such as VTrans look for when potentially funding that project. And if the town were to move forward, it would then go into construction documentation, permitting, and construction itself. Part of the scoping study process is to generate a purpose and need that is approved by VTrans. The purpose is, like I said, to study the feasibility and appropriateness of various alternatives for safe pedestrian facilities along Munsell Avenue between West Street and Pine Street. So those 2 blocks with Pleasant Street perpendicular along the middle. And the need is both the presence of Bristol Works, making this a dynamic residential and commercial and office and police institutional block. There is a bus stop up at Bristol Works. There's a lot of access issues, both to downtown, to the recreation fields, and to Mount Abraham Union Middle High School. And so Munsell Avenue is integral to that network that the town is continuously trying to build out. We really focused, especially given that we're just looking at 2 blocks, we had the opportunity to focus on as much public outreach as possible. To the far left of the screen is a door hanger that we put at every residence we could along Munsell Avenue to notify folks that this study was happening. And then we have posters for both the original local concerns meeting back in May and September's alternative presentation. And we also have posters that we prepared for both of the surveys. There was a survey at that initial, hey, we're doing a study, what do you think stage? And the alternatives, hey, we've identified these 4 options for sidewalks or pedestrian access. What do you think stage? Again, Munsell Avenue, which you all know where it is, connecting west toward the bottom of the page to Pine Street at the north. And some of the items around and places and locations and destinations around Munsell Avenue. As part of a scoping study, you look at the existing conditions in some detail. You look at the width of the right-of-way, which is important to better understand if a sidewalk were slotted in, would it be within that area that the public by right has access to? That doesn't mean this isn't property of folks and that we can't be sensitive to both the trees and the yards that might be encroached upon should a sidewalk be built. But nonetheless, it's instructive to know that there's about a 50-foot wide right-of-way along Munsell Avenue where the town could do work. And the pavement itself, for context, is about 22 feet wide for the length of the road. We looked at access. We looked at that 80-foot plus crossing at West. And these are all sort of data points and ideas that feed into a final design and considerations. Of course, utilities. Critical, especially if and when something were to get built and designed and excavated. It's interesting that you have utility poles and hydrants on both the east and the west sides of Munsell Avenue. And you have subsurface water lines on both the east and the west sides of Munsell Avenue. And so sometimes utilities are very instructive, especially from a cost and feasibility standpoint about how to do work, perhaps less so along these 2 blocks, given that they go back and forth to each side. Stormwater flow is obviously an issue. Eric has spoken about the corner of Pleasant and Munsell, and that there's potential sometime in the future for additional stormwater management infrastructure. We'll note that 2 of the alternatives we've discussed have curbs. A curbed sidewalk right along the road also introduces its own stormwater management needs and with elevated costs to put in dry wells, for example. But this is also an opportunity, should work be done at Pleasant and Munsell, to combine costs and efforts into the building of a sidewalk, if that work will be done on a similar timetable over the next few years. Trees, I would say more than any other single thing, the residents, both in personal conversations and in open-ended comments in the surveys, expressed how important the trees in their own yards and generally to the character of the street in Bristol are. And we weighted the tree removal component accordingly. We'll see that in the matrix. But your tree warden was very generous with this time to walk around and look at the individual trees and their sensitivities. And that includes the cedars at Bristol Works, which not only are attractive, but they also offer screening to the parking lot that's there to both the residents across the street and people driving by. And so what to do with those cedars was another thing that we explored in this scoping study. And once again, Bristol Works, dynamic, currently institutional, over 100 plus workers, as well as commercial and light industrial, but there's also a vision, see here on the right, for at least 8 residential units in some areas that are not yet developed on the site. And that again feeds into the need for a project like this and why Munsell and why not, for example, as some folks have expressed, continuing the sidewalk on Liberty or other streets in the town. Local concern survey had about 31 responses. There was, more than half of the respondents are on Munsell Avenue daily. There was about a 2/3 preference for an east side sidewalk. And there was more than 2/3 preference, this lower question in blue, for it being right along the roadway and curbed. And that probably reflects the extent to which residents, at least in part, residents along Munsell did not want that additional encroachment of a buffered sidewalk, which would not only be the 5 feet of the concrete itself, but an additional 4-foot grass strip right along the road. Now, the alternatives that we looked at, many of you have seen these already. Any scoping study that we do with V-Trans, this will include the one that you're doing over on Airport Drive, has to have a no-build option. Could be that the town and you all look at the options, look at the feasibility, look at the scores, look at the public input that you've received and said, well, yeah, okay, this was worthwhile, but no thanks. And so that's what the no-build option is, and we always want to make sure it's presented to you. However, for the sidewalk options that are actually, physically concrete, we looked at a west side sidewalk and curbed, and we looked at the various potential construction hindrances from having to move a hydrant, which is doable. It's not easy, but it's doable. Removing trees, 6 trees in this option. The west side has a little more heavier on street trees close to the road. We also looked at, the number of utility poles that would have to be moved. That's also feasible and doable and happens, but it's a cost. This is a mock-up, a photo simulation of what that west side curved sidewalk would look like. So the west side of the road, 5 feet wide, curved right against the road. That would also include, in terms of cost, the installation of dry wells to catch the rainwater, the runoff that's traveling along the edge of the curb, so it doesn't feed out onto either Pleasant or on West Street. There's a gentle slope from north to south along Munsell. East side, same thing. East side, though, curbed. There's the additional interesting opportunity to work with Thad Searle at the corner. He is not keen to have anything that might interrupt the flow of trucks throughout his property. We'll see a little later that we looked into, how we might be able to both accommodate the truck flow through his property as well as potentially solve some stormwater management issues on his property that he identified. But essentially, an east side curb sidewalk is just like the west in that we looked at hydrants and utility poles and tree removals and along that corridor. A mock-up of what the east side would look like, and we're up here at Bristol Works. East side buffered. Now, buffered sidewalk on a road like Munsell Avenue, you'll look at Maple, Liberty, Elm, what have you. Most of the sidewalks that the town has constructed along village streets such as this are buffered sidewalks. Sometimes it's 4 feet, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5. It really depends. What a buffered sidewalk allows is slightly lower cost because you're not building the curb, you're not putting in the dry wells. You also allow for the continuation of on-street parking. And that's another thing that was expressed by some residents as a concern that overflow parking from their driveways would be cut off. However, we're still looking at the same issues in terms of moving utility poles and hydrants, somewhat more so because we're that much further. We're 9 feet instead of 5 feet further into the properties. And we're also looking up at Bristol Works, a very heavy prune of those cedars. We have a little more of that moving forward, but here's a mock-up of what that buffered sidewalk would look like. We're here down at Thad's. We had one of our transportation engineers take a 22.5-foot Hino truck, which is approximately the wheelbase and overall length of a tow truck that might service Thad's, and had it run around every which way, about 7 or 8 different directions through the property. And we also noticed that the curb, now there's a faint black line that perhaps you can see along here on the Thad side there where it meets west, is much broader than the curb over on the west side here. And so that faint black line actually presents some additional opportunities to give Thad all the space that he has to park vehicles temporarily as he does on this corner and along the side, not impede traffic. And in the final report to you, we'll have an updated version of this diagram, potentially showing how we could both have this curb to be more normative, as well as put in rain garden type curb structures and a flush sidewalk. That's something that emphasized, that if there were to be a sidewalk, along the edge of his property, that flush would be acceptable, either painted or flush. But what he did not want is any additional curbing blocking off this central area. And while this project is focused on pedestrian safety, it's a pedestrian safety primarily scoping study primarily. Thad's business is important. The service that he provides is essential. You know how busy he is. And we really do want to take all and every bit of input from him. And he was just obviously away for the last 2 weeks, but I will be bringing this to him in person to discuss. And again, the final report will have his input as well on this potential design, if east side sidewalk were selected for the preferred alternative. Here are a couple photo mock-ups of if the buffered sidewalk were done up at Bristol Works, what at least a Photoshop version of cutting the cedars way back would look like. The alternative vision that we had is for fence and shrubs, and this isn't an either or. We could certainly try cutting back the cedars, see how well they do, see how well they look. And if it's not going to work out, we'll work with the property owner to find a better long-term solution. We also noticed another curb radius at the southeast corner with Pleasant Street was also far wider. And that's this red dotted line, dash line below. That's the existing curb line. But if we bring it in, tighten it just a little bit, it'll now match the other 3 corners. This isn't a corner. We looked into it that tractor trailers typically take coming off Pleasant. On Munsell, it's actually usually the other side coming around from Martin's. So we think to actually make a continuous sidewalk, otherwise folks would be walking into the street if they're walking up onto Pleasant Street. And so there's the potential with a buffered sidewalk to tighten up this curb line a little bit. Any questions on that? I'm not sure it's clear in the diagrams what exactly would be required. So right here is the existing Pleasant sidewalk. And if a buffered sidewalk were to come in on Munsell, someone, if you can follow the hand, would have to come out into the crosswalk and then go up into Munsell. Not the end of the world, but it's not ideal from a pedestrian safety standpoint. So tightening up this curb to actually match the 3 other curbs on Munsell Avenue at this intersection at Munsell and Pleasant would offer the opportunity to have one continuous concrete surface. So it's just, this is the kind of thing that we look at in a scoping study and have the opportunity to do this when we're just looking at 2 blocks of a single street as opposed to 4 or 5 different streets, which some scoping studies look at. And the final item that we looked at, and forgive the lights that need to detect movement, and I'm not moving enough for them to think anyone's in the office right now. So forgive the creepy Dan lighting. Advisory lanes are another option. They could be temporary. They could be try out. They're still somewhat in an experimental stage, and we'd have to explore the funding if this were identified as the preferred alternative. But what they essentially are an option where there is a single center lane where cars would move to the side when it's safe to do so. But what would it allow would be 2 5-foot wide paint only sidewalks essentially, or walkways, if you will, not sidewalks per se, on each side of the road. So vehicles would not have enough room to pass each other within the single center lane. So they would have to wait until it's safe to do so, or there isn't an on-street parked vehicle. But after walkers or cyclists pass by, then the vehicles would pass each other. And so it's a much more pedestrian friendly option than nothing. It's far less expensive. But from a safety standpoint, it's not ideal, and it's not as ideal as a sidewalk, but it is one of the alternatives that we explored and illustrated for your consideration. So the alternative survey, this was open from the day of our presentation to you 2 months ago up until October 26th. So it was open for a month. We received about twice as many responses, which was nice. A broader cross section of people, this green, less than once a month. Pie wedge has grown significantly. So it seems that we drew in people from throughout the town in this survey. And there was a similar response though, in terms of, yes, we think there should be a sidewalk on Munsell Avenue, about 60%. And then in terms of the 4 options that we presented, west side curbed, buffered east side curbed, and advisory lanes. And you can look along the right side of these graphs, the 5 and the 4, those are the most favorable responses. So you can see this third set of graphs down, that is the east side curbed option. So that came in first, at least in terms of the preference expressed in this survey, followed about the same as advisory lanes, if we're looking at the 4 and the 5, as to east side buffered. So this is the alternatives evaluation matrix, and we don't need to go through every single item, but what we created was a 0, 1, 2, 3 scoring system for everything that we looked at and everything that I just described to you. Which option would increase pedestrian safety the most? Obviously, no build would be a 0, and the most would be a buffered sidewalk because it gets pedestrians the furthest away from the road. For example, traffic calming advisory lanes would certainly slow traffic, but you see also that it has a fairly low safety score. Property impact scores looked at, how much will the sidewalk go into a property, 9 feet versus 5 feet, for example, and the number of properties that would be impacted on either the west side or the east side. We did look at costs using a VTrans model for length of sidewalk, length of curb, and estimated costs for things like tree removal, utility relocation, and the installation of dry wells. And so the most expensive option for all of those reasons would be the curbed sidewalk on the west, followed closely by a curbed sidewalk on the east, then or a curbed sidewalk on the west, rather. Oh, this is another option we threw in just for consideration because it was mentioned during the alternatives meeting in September. Well, what if you start in the west, switch over at Pleasant, and go to the east. So at least for this alternatives matrix, and that is actually an alternative that tonight, if you identify that as your preferred alternative, we'll run with it. So that's still out there. We just hadn't done any of the drawings for it. Obviously a buffered sidewalk because it doesn't have the curbs or the stormwater infrastructure is sort of a mid-range cost, still significant. And down at the bottom, the advisory lanes, it's essentially a paint product cost there. We looked at tree and hedge removal as well as the impacts of doing so. And in the steering committee meeting in October, we actually lowered some of the scores for that had higher tree removal because of the importance placed by the residents on their trees. It's more than just a feasibility of removing and potentially replacing trees. It's really the character of the mature trees, the shade they provide, and how much people love their trees. And construction difficulty, whether it's moderate or low, if it's just the sidewalk, or very low, if it's just the paint. And all of these were averaged in along with the alternative survey, the percentages of a 4% and 5% rank. We got a support score, and then we got a final score. Now, looking at the final score, the clear winner, if you will, was the curb sidewalk along the east side of the road. And so that was a combination of cost, public input, what have you, followed by the advisory lanes. Now, we find this kind of matrix extremely useful, but it's not the only part of you making a decision tonight to select a preferred alternative. What isn't in here, for example, is that, like I said, most of the roads like Munsell have the sidewalk set back from the road with a grass strip. So that's no small thing, but it's just not captured in this matrix. While we're on this page, any questions then on this matrix? Okay, well, here we are. You can either discuss it among yourselves or figure out how you want to move forward. But again, the purpose of the time tonight, and thanks again, was to identify which of these alternatives or a no build, or including a no build, or the switching from the west side, which will go from West Street up to Pleasant, cross over on the existing crosswalk that's there on the south side of Pleasant, and then head up the east side, might be your preferred alternative. So we'd like the minutes to reflect what was selected, and concisely, if we could craft a concise sentence or so as to why it was selected.
Dan, I have a question. Joel from Bristol. I was the one that suggested this alternative, go up the west side from West Street to West Pleasant and then go up the east side. There was, how many trees, if you did that, were on the east side from West
Because they
Pleasant?
showed right
there in the matrix, 2 trees.
Right,
So
yeah.
the alternate is only 2 trees cut back versus obviously the hedges up.
And you gotta move 1 hydrant and 2 driveway.
Yeah, so it's not nothing. It didn't really do it. I think it's 1 fewer trees than if you just ran up the east
Okay.
side, for
Yeah, you see it
example,
says
the
no
entire way.
curbs, east side is 3 trees. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
The curbed west, and I think it's mostly though because of the northern block of on the west side, the significant number of trees. You still have a hedge. This hedge is actually on the east side in that northern block. There's a hedge, there's a privet hedge that's pretty substantial on the east side of the northern block. So if we switched over, that's where that hedge is. However, I think both of these 2 trees are on the west side. You just come that close.
And now the second question is, if the sidewalk was all on the west going all the way, and most of the water from that comes down and meets in the puddles at the corner of West Pleasant and Munsell and Pleasant Street, that 4-way intersection, comes from Bristol Works, from the paved parking lot, comes out of those driveways. So would that water have to cross the road to get to those curbs or those drop inlets if that was a curb sidewalk on the west side?
There seems to be a very slight crown in Munsell. And so I don't think were a west side curbed with dry well sidewalk constructed, that it would capture any of that water. You know, I defer to the wisdom of others in that, but it seemed like the reason it's hugging the side of the road is because of that crown.
And because, I mean, I know the road foreman enough, so I've talked about putting some from about where you go into the police department, dry wells down there to the corner. Because it does come out of there. And doesn't cross the road. Am I correct in saying that?
We talked about putting
The west
put the
street,
dry wells in.
right, but being on the east side of Munsell Avenue and not on the west, and that's why I was, if we go with a curb sidewalk on the west side, will we still have to put drainage on the east side of Munsell Avenue going to West Street?
If we want to get rid of the water.
Yeah, unless you regraded the street, and then we're looking also now, there's an underlay on this image of topography, and this is from the Agency of Natural Resources Atlas, and it's as precise as it can be given that context. You also see, let's say, a contour line that's moving like this indicates there's actually a slight slope from west to east. And so if there's not a crown, then there's a slope from west to east. So either way, unless the road were completely regraded, you wouldn't be capturing east side stormwater flow on the west side of the street.
So I guess my last question is back to that money chart you had.
Yep.
That was about 200 and some odd thousand to do a buffer with no curb.
Yep.
But that doesn't include any drainage.
That's right.
Well, any of the drainage that's included in there doesn't solve our drainage problem.
No, but is the 430, the ones with a curb on the east side, does that include drainage or no?
Yeah, I think that could be designed. What that includes is one dry well per 100 feet. And so along the 1,200, 1,400 feet of new sidewalk construction, I think that could be designed well enough to capture that stormwater very well at one per 100.
$160,000 difference.
No, I'm just saying
Okay.
that 1,400, it's 1,400
Yeah.
feet, you're gonna have 14 dry wells.
Also, Dan, if I'm thinking about this correctly, and I think we talked about this in our last meeting, if on the west side, we'd also have to replace two or move two hydrants, correct? There's one at the corner on North Street and then the one at the corner by West Pleasant.
Yeah, at your property. I think that one up at West Pleasant is far enough away from the corner to not require shifting. Obviously, it's significant excavation to get down there and add pipe and move it back in a way that, you know, is still tight and usable by emergency services. But I think on the west side, we just have it as a single hydrant, and it's that one down close to west by the fence there. Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of, you know, looking at these numbers, obviously the highest is our curbed east sidewalk, and our second would be the advisory lanes. And obviously you can see that there's quite an astounding difference in price between those number one and number two. I don't know, Val, and you might be able to answer this in terms of availability of grants and funding for the 6.7 choice, which would be the 430,000. What have we done in the past in terms of putting in new sidewalk, Val?
With the fact that we've had this scoping study done will increase any projects or the project's competitiveness in grant application through the V-Trans Bike Ped program and perhaps other accessibility and there are other programs that would support sidewalks, either in combination with other grants, depending on the timing. I do believe there would be reasonable grant funding available for completing this project of any of the elements, any of the choices.
Okay,
So
that's positive.
The only new sidewalk we've ever done is from on the south side of Pleasant Street from Munsell to Liberty, and that was a Safe Routes to School grant. Other than that, we have not put in any new sidewalk. All we've done is replaced old sidewalk.
I did
interesting.
two
Okay.
major sidewalk projects while in Waitsfield. Major
Okay.
sidewalk projects.
I mean,
Okay.
in town right now, we have two curb sidewalks, the ones on Main Street and the ones in front of the elementary school. And then and then everything else, even after those elementary school, it's got green space in between.
Mhm.
You know, it's the, buffered no curb.
And one of the concerns was parking, on-street parking. If we put the curb sidewalk, there's no on-street parking there.
Right.
Right, and that's why people didn't like that idea.
Right. The curb, is supported more, right? In terms of the surveys, 54% versus 35.
I'm guessing that some of that is due to encroachment onto people's property too, which I would be,
Right.
if.
Right. So right. It's more of your property that is changing versus the ability to park there. So, yeah. I mean, obviously number 5 lets us experiment with something that we had been previously talking about on Pine Street. It's the least expensive, but it doesn't solve our drainage or water issues. It also doesn't allow us to improve on any of the safety on that street, especially the curb by Pleasant and Munsell, sort of fixing that radius, as well as fixing potential safety issues at Thad's as well. I like that idea, and I know that his preference is buffered, and that seems to work more. But I feel that the picture that you displayed, Dan, in terms of the improving that area, could that also be, is that able to be curbed in any way? This is the no curb version, but it seems like you could do a curbed version that would still at least curbed up to where you might cross the longest area of his driveway. You could do curbed and then have it just be the same level.
Yeah, you can. And what you'd have is sort of a scupper or an inlet through the curb for the
Okay.
rainwater to get into the planted area.
Okay.
And that's essentially, I think, what this lower photo is indicating. Something
Okay.
along those lines is fairly common.
Okay.
And you might
I-
want
I-
to consider a rolled curb or, or something, just a construction that should a vehicle either overshoot or for whatever reason, you could do sort of a rolled or slanted curb.
Okay.
In that area for that reason.
Yeah, I feel like if we're going to spend money on this, whether it's grant money or the town taxpayers' money, it's like trying to make as many improvements as possible to this area. I think it should be high on the priority list.
Don't we have
No.
a catch basin right there on West Street that's tied into that new drainage system? Right on the corner?
No,
No, there's not one
I don't think so.
on either side there.
there is, if you
I
go
don't think
by,
so.
between Thad's and Madeline, there's a catch basin there, but
So towards the north?
not at the intersection.
Towards the east,
Towards the east, on
West Street.
West Street.
and isn't there one about the end of Gerald's fence and the one
Yeah, there's one on the other end.
Yeah.
Odd that we don't have one on that corner.
No,
So what are the board's thoughts about any of these potential alternatives?
I've always spoken about, you're fighting the snow on the curb, and the street plow always wins over the sidewalk. Because with a curb, you're putting it right on the thing, and then if somebody's walking and cars coming up through, and take that chance, you fall off that curb and you could get hit by a car. Not that I'm saying fall off the curb, but kids get pushing or get just playing, doing things, and somebody gets hit. I like the buffer. I realize it's approaching on them. I wonder if Dan, if your crew at least could mark that spot and show the neighbors that, well, we didn't realize, it was that much or not that much. But when you add that's why I asked that price, that comes with no drainage, and we always want to do the drainage, so we're going to be up to the price of a curb sidewalk probably if we add drainage to that number 3, 270,000.
Okay.
Yeah, the advisory lanes, the one thing we want to bear in mind is that adds a budget cost every year of striping. It's not,
Is it
it's not,
is that yearly though? I mean, I was
It
thinking
will-
about that because I know that we've talked about this before, but I feel like we could get a few years out of that given the amount of
We-
traffic that would actually
Yeah,
hit the lines.
No,
I
not with the cars
don't
driving
believe
over
it because, we have to do our crosswalks.
every year.
Sometimes our crosswalk should be done twice a year with the amount of wear they get.
This
But
is
that's-
water soluble paint that we, certainly there are more robust paints, but this is a water soluble. As
Yeah, and I guess with that too, you are tires. I mean, with the crosswalks, tires are crossing it all the time, and with this, because it's the dashed lines, tires are crossing it as well. Versus the solid lines on the edges of roads where you're not really hitting those as much. So yeah, I guess you're right, Peter. I was thinking about that for north, like having to do that every year. I guess in the bike lane, the pictures of the bicycle or whatever, that's probably. We could probably get a few years out of that. But the actual lines, yeah, you might be right. It might be a yearly thing.
I mean, it's a consideration. That doesn't mean that we
Yeah.
don't have to maintain the sidewalks too, There's
That's
gonna be
true.
more salt or sand and
Yeah,
more
Replacement.
time plowing and eventually replacement.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I
Val,
think
you had a
that's-
question? Yeah.
Yes, let me lower my hand here, lower my hand. This may have come up already. If the buffered approach, for those areas where people are not likely to be parking off street and into that green space, is there an opportunity to plant additional trees?
In
The green
between,
Between the road and the sidewalk? That green
Correct,
space? I
correct.
don't think we want trees in there.
yeah, that 5 feet is not enough it's not, you're gonna increase it on the road or the sidewalk eventually.
Right.
And then Eric will go and cut it and then we'll be in trouble.
Or it'll die and we'll be in trouble from the salt.
It's interesting in this top photo, you can see where there was the old sidewalk from Thad's and that it was
Right.
curbed. That it was
Yeah,
curbed
it is
and had,
Yeah.
and had that
Yeah.
space.
I like the green space for a couple of reasons, partly because that's what everywhere else in the town is. I just think it would be the same. But like Ian, I like the curbed area by Thad's. I like that little water garden and trying to
Mhm.
do there, yes.
change that intersection to make it a little bit safer and better. But I think whatever we do, we have to deal with the stormwater.
Yeah. And
But
the
it's-
fact, I mean, part of this too is like, yes, the even though we have a lot of green space area, I mean, that's the majority of our sidewalks. As Peter said, we haven't put a lot of new sidewalk in for a long, long time. And so I think we have to be very mindful of residents and how much something of the buffered, how much is taken up on people's properties. I think we need to be very mindful of that. It's not like we're constantly doing this and we're sort of fighting that battle. This is a new thing, if we decide to go ahead with this. So I think we do really need to think about that and be very aware. And so the curb obviously saves us and residents a lot of potential struggle with putting the sidewalk in. And I don't mind that we only have a few that are curbed. I think that solution seems fine. I think we could easily adapt to that on it, and that option does seem to get us the most out of the project, especially if we could sort of adapt it for around Thad's and fixing the area by Pleasant and Munsell. It's obviously just the cost is one of the highest.
But
Yeah, you can fix all that either way. I mean,
Yeah.
I would assume that coming off of West Street, that first part of Thad's would be curbed anyway, regardless
Right.
of what we do. Yes. And then from there, whatever we decide.
I'm But am I assuming that even with the green space, we're still within our right of way?
Yes,
So it's not like, I mean, I understand we're encroaching in, but it's not like we're saying, okay, we're spreading our right of way out further than it already is.
well, there was always a sidewalk from west to Pleasant. And there's remnants of it there in a lot of places. It's either been grown over or tore out by the residents. And, you know, it was just a case of, it probably wasn't a high priority. And the people that lived there didn't complain about it. So when it got bad, instead of replacing it, they grassed over it and away they went.
Kind of like the one that was on the north side of Pleasant Street.
Yep.
Tail of the north.
Yep.
There was a street. sign on there, and that's been grassed over years ago.
I mean, we do have, with the buffered, you're obviously moving more utility poles and you're removing more trees. You have that heavy pruning over at Bristol Works. And I know that people have spoken very favorably to those trees there. You know, with the curbed option, we have light pruning of those trees and the potential to have them still look nice for years to come, which is nice. I do think that west side versus the east seems to be a fairly simple decision, and I would go west. No, east. Sorry. Whoopsie. The one that's on display right now, east. Yes. Thank you.
Closest to the cliffs.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if we went the west side, Dan, then we wouldn't do any improvements to that side of the road, correct?
That's correct.
So,
Yeah. And I think a straight shot versus
And we
jumping
could
one
ask
side to
them
the
do
other.
that, though. That could be part of the project.
That
I mean, there's
tentative,
nothing to say we can't have that part of the project, right, Dan?
We can tighten that intersection up, extend the sidewalk on west.
And put that same.
sorry, what are you suggesting or asking?
If we went on the west side, we could extend the sidewalk on the east side at West Street to narrow that intersection up a little bit.
By Thad's, where you were recommending putting the water garden
Yeah.
in the, we could still do that even if we went on the west
Just
side
to,
of the street.
just extend it to the west. Extend that, bring the curb further down West
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
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 It's obviously outside of this, but we could take
Yeah.
ideas from this to be able to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the response from residents, it seems that the east is the most favored, and so I'd want to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I can anecdotally say, because I live here and I see people walking every day, that's the side that people tend to walk on. I rarely see folks on the other side of the street. So I think it's mostly because a lot of the foot traffic comes from Bristol Works, so they come straight down. And I also just add my 2 cents that I like the idea of a single one-sided sidewalk instead of switching from one side to the other. I'm glad we explored that, but to me, it makes more sense to have that straight shot for people. It feels, and we're talking about kids, it feels safer as well.
And it does fix that corner at west at Pleasant. Curves.
Yeah. Yeah. So my preference would be number 2. It's obviously, you know, it has the highest rating, but I also think it makes the most sense. It encroaches less on residents' properties. You have fewer utility poles and trees to be removed. You get the safety for the entire stretch of the road, as well as improving intersections at Thad's, as well as Pleasant as well.
Where, I guess just a question, where are the dry wells that are there now that are on there to mark to be moved?
For number 2?
Well, there's 3 of them have dry wells being moved, and I don't know where there's any dry wells there, I guess is
Right,
my
let me
question.
see if I can find photos of those for you.
The intersection on the left and the right. There's 1, 2, On the
Oh, they're
left-hand
dry well, yes,
They're just dry well.
Oh, okay.
they're just before, the seal place.
Okay.
There's one of them. Yeah, but they're close, yeah, they're close enough to the roadway, yeah, that they
Oh, okay, yep.
moved into the roadway, for example. That's an example of one.
I just hadn't seen them.
Yeah, and they get kind of buried with leaves and debris, and so that's a separate issue in a way, but it makes it harder to see them, that's for sure. Yeah.
Are you saying we should say something to our road foreman?
They don't work.
I'm not saying anything.
You said they don't work?
But sand,
Yeah.
They certainly attract flow.
I mean, you got this fucking all out. Then they only work for a year.
There seems to be a general preference for the east side.
Well,
E-
I would,
I would say that's
east
true.
side is
Yeah.
my preferred.
And just to step back again, this isn't binding anything on the town. It's really which option do you want this scoping study report to explore further?
See, I guess my option is the buffered east side, with the curbing at Thad's. I mean, and I understand where you're coming from, but I also know that with a curb, the plow trucks are just gonna hit it and destroy it. No offense, Eric.
No, and the where's gonna get destroyed the worst is on the curbs.
Mhm.
So like Thad's, if you put a curbing there, when they back out, back down, and then they drop, and then they come back on the Munsell, that's where the wing's gonna carve,
Mhm.
possibly carve into the curbing.
I like number 3. No curve involved. on the east side.
I do as well.
I've recorded 1 upvote for the curbed and 3 upvotes for the buffered.
Come on, Darla.
No, I think,
Well-
wait, so what was Speaker and Joel? Was yours number 2 or
They're
number?
buffered.
Buffer.
Okay, buffer, okay.
I heard curved.
Yeah, I thought you guys
I
wanted
heard
curve.
number
No
2, the
curve.
curve.
Oh, no curve.
Buffered,
Okay,
buffered with no curve.
Number 3. we
Number
said.
3.
okay.
So
If we had to
I'm,
cut- If we had to cut it to a 3-foot grass strip to please the neighbors, I'd be more than willing to move on.
Okay.
so
Alright.
I'm a little conflicted in that I live here. And I feel awkward. I might abstain from this because I feel awkward saying not on my side of the street, on the other side, or vice versa. So
Say
I
whatever
don't,
you want, Darla. You're entitled to your opinion.
well, true. I mean,
We've already kind of said the east side,
Yeah, we
so.
all said the east side.
so I mean, like I said, that is where I see people naturally walking. So if you're looking for my opinion, I think that's the most natural place to go. As far as I'm thinking of my neighbor across the street that has that big fence, putting it, having the sidewalk with a buffer is really going to push that back. He also has a pergola in that corner of the yard. So that's going to be a lot of change for him. Again, I understand what you're saying, about it. That is the right of way. I don't quite remember when that went in, but
What, the pergola or the?
The
Fence.
when I don't know when the
That's
fence
when
went
you
in.
have
That was
that
long
big
before I
Yeah,
lived
when
here.
Bristol Family Center.
Said it was there, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I actually like the curved version better because it's not quite so encroaching. So there's my opinion.
Okay. And Darrell, that was the one that brought up the west side and then switch over. And the only reason was because it was less, I walked that street a while back before the September meeting and there was less movement between West Street and Munsell Avenue to your corner on the west side. And then there was less movement of
You mean the
Construct-
trees?
trees and other stuff. And then move across and go up to Bristol Works. There was only 2 houses on that side versus all the ones on the west side from Munsell up to Pond. That was the only reason I thought we could switch and be
No, I
less
un-
destructive to the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I appreciate that.
So I have Ian and Darla for the curb sidewalk, number 2, and Peaker for number 3. What am I missing?
Joel and I are both number 3 as well.
Also,
Okay,
And Joel mentioned the potential, instead of 4-foot buffer, 3-foot, to use
If it-
slightly less of our right of way there. And I don't know, with that, Joel, with that fence that's right there, looking at that picture, does that fence need to move then?
probably does.
We'd have to
Still
move it anyway. They'd end
Right.
up with a new fence out of the deal.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not, I'm guessing it's not gonna be a lot.
Okay. All right.
A
And
lot-
obviously,
a lot
we,
more.
if we decide
Yeah.
to go ahead with this, we'd want to reach out to residents and sort of discuss this. And I'm sure, hopefully, all residents know about this. Obviously, we've tried to do as much outreach as possible, and we would do the same if we decided to go in a particular direction with this.
Yeah, and 3 feet up at those big cedars at Bristol Works may help not chopping them completely down and,
Yeah.
so.
So
Yeah,
is
'cause you
that
don't
what you'd
have
like
the
us
tops
to?
cut. Dan, you don't have the tops cut in the Photoshop, the one you have just pruned it where people are gonna walk. You're not like taking the whole thing all the way up.
And I
No, not
believe
all the
it's-
way up. I tried to
Yeah.
keep a little overhead. It's a
Right.
little clunky looking. And you may
Mhm.
decide once you do it or see how it grows or doesn't over a few years that it's not working aesthetically or functionally or
Mhm.
Well,
botanically.
I think with the amount of, another issue that I find with the amount of traffic going in and out of Bristol Works, we've never had a problem there, but anytime I've come out of there, I've had to have my vehicle in the road before I could see because of those trees.
Hmm.
I don't think, trimming them is from a safety
Safety.
point of coming out of that parking lot is a good
That's
thing.
interesting. Yeah.
And I won't put words in Kevin's mouth, but I think at the September meeting, he wasn't opposed to a fence.
Right.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, Joel. Kevin was open to doing basically whatever needed to get done, really, but he was very open to having those trimmed back.
Mhm.
And Ian, remind me, I think he said they'd done that a while back, right? Because it was
Yes.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I
as they were growing, they had done some trimming. This would obviously be much more extreme by putting this in, but I think he was amenable to the trees being heavily trimmed or even being removed if that's what was what people wanted.
Right, this southern bank of cedars, you can almost see in this photo that they've already been trimmed because any vehicle coming out, obviously the traffic coming in from the left is the more concerning in terms of visibility. And so this southern group of cedars has already been trimmed significantly compared to this
Okay.
northern group.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a hydrant in there too.
Yeah, there's a hydrant tucked back in here. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's as Peter you mentioned, that's a good reason to sort of explore the buffered too, to be able to trim those back. I mean, you could do that as well as if we did curbed, but this gives us a better reason to improve safety and line of sight there as well with going with that with number 3.
Do we have Eric's opinion?
We can ask for it. Eric, what's your opinion?
I don't know, it doesn't matter to me as long as it ain't curved.
So I guess he wants the buffer.
So any
I
anyone
guess he's a no
as
bill.
long as it's 3.
Release the strokes. The line.
Oh, I don't, either side doesn't matter to me, and this curving is hard on the wings, that's all.
I mean, is there with the curb, is there any way to avoid hitting the curb? Is it the driver's skill? Can you put things that, I mean, I understand if it's covered in snow, it's obviously hard to see the curb.
Well,
Can we put something there to be able to see the curb, or is it just like it's just a natural thing that happens over time?
you can have the best driver in the world and they're gonna hit them now and then.
Yeah.
And you're right, the less experienced ones are gonna hit them more often until they get used to them. It's just, the main thing is when you make the corners coming on, the straightaways on them are fairly easy. You can just pick a line of sight and you can go and use it, you're good. It's when you pull on to them or you come off and cut around is where you normally get the curving.
Okay.
So it's just basically on the entrances.
Okay. I mean, looking at this, let's say we go with number 3 buffered and we decide to do that. That obviously saves us a good amount of money, which is always nice. But we are looking at, we did want to improve the safety at FADS, which probably does mean, don't install that update. That probably does mean putting curb in there somewhere. So we're still going to have the potential for that curb getting hit. Because I don't see another way to improve that safety wise without having a curb there, correct?
And it's there now, it's just not as
Nice.
pronounced.
Right.
That's true. Yes.
I mean, we got curving on North Street and we got curving where we turn out coming on the church, and I mean, it's not gonna be anything different. It's just, I was just trying to avoid more of it, that's all. Not a big deal.
Okay.
Is that other curbing concrete or are they granite sections?
Concrete.
Everything except for Main Street is concrete.
Now, certainly concrete's maybe less of a cost, but in your experience, is one or the other preferred?
That's a question for you, Eric.
Curving's curving.
Granite's,
Granite's harder.
it lasts twice as long, correct, man?
Yeah. But no, I mean, whichever the board decides to go with, it doesn't.
Granted, we'd have to go all the way to the other side of
Right.
that. We'd have to redo that whole curving.
Yeah, no.
Okay, well, that's concrete then right there on that.
Yeah.
that radius.
Yeah, concrete up there. You're still gonna have to redo that up there anyways, because that's all.
So we've got
deteriorated and everything up there too, so.
We've got a preference so far for number 3, taking the road foreman's consideration too in terms of curbing. That would be a 4th in terms of at this meeting. So Joel suggested that maybe we reduce the buffer a little bit. I'm curious if that's going to affect our vegetation impact score and utility impact score. Removing 3 trees, removing 6 utility poles. Does that help us at all, I wonder? Maybe that's something we could look into if we still have time and the ability to do that. And I'm curious also too if that affects our survey score. Looking at 27% versus 54, 35, it's obviously quite a lot lower. And so the residents aren't going to be as happy. But I'm wondering if by reducing that buffer, we can improve that at all potentially.
It would be speculation, Ian. I think at this point,
I know.
Even with moving utility, 1 foot,
I know. Does it help? Yeah.
unlikely. I mean, you might nibble away at the margins here and there, but it probably wouldn't appreciably move this 5.15 score up
Okay.
above anything else. And, maybe when it came down to fine grained design, you discovered that foot makes all the difference between moving a utility pole or not, or taking out a tree. But in terms of this planning level work, I don't think it makes a difference, except in terms of what you want this document to show. If you wanted to say, hey, 3 feet, and that's where we're going, great. We'll do it. We'll adjust the drawings a little bit and the labels and go with that. You think it's just wise.
Yeah. Val?
Let me lower that hand again. Hang on. Okay, lowered hand. In terms of the utility poles, from where you have your design plans measured, is it real impact on the utility poles, or could the sidewalk just have a few cutouts to accommodate the utility poles?
I bet in a few cases, well, maybe more so with the curbed, maybe less so with the buffered. I'd say with the buffered setback, the total of 9 feet or even 8 feet, it's more of a real impact thing, Valerie. I think
Okay.
we're a little more conservative on the curbed, where we said, well, if it's within a foot or two, just the mere fact of construction might require some relocation. But with the buffered, I think in every case, all the numbers that we have here, these 6 utility poles, they'd be pretty much heading right through. We'll double check that.
Hey, why don't we put the utilities underground?
It's been,
You want to add to that line item?
Tongue in
Okay.
cheek,
Yeah.
sort of. Might be an option.
okay, so it seems like we have a selection of a buffered east side sidewalk. Just the final item, do you want us to document a 3-foot offset or a 4-foot offset since it's come up?
I would say the 4 foot, and we could
I'd
always
like to
change.
stay at 4 if we could. But, I said the 3, I could live with if we didn't have to move as many utilities. Now, maybe to please the neighbors, here again, we always want to take their needs and is if we have to move those 6 utilities and we kept it to 4 feet, could they possibly put the utility poles in the green space? And get them not, so they're not on the inside of the sidewalk, so disturbing them is more. Could we put those 6 utility poles in that 4-foot green space? Right now, they're probably no more than 5 feet off the edge of the road now, 4 or 5 feet off the edge now.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
Yep.
No on-street parking.
You definitely want them centered in that space, so.
Right.
So the sidewalk plow and the street plow.
Aren't
Okay,
hitting them, correct.
Yeah, all the more reason then to stick with the 4, if that's an
Yeah.
option. And some of
And if
these,
you have a
Yeah,
picture there,
yeah.
you might be able to see one of them. You have a picture of
Yeah.
the west side.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
east side.
And Val mentioned there on-street parking, but that you lose that ability, but I don't see a lot of on-street parking
Right.
in that way on Munsell.
Mhm.
Either in that first stretch past Thad's or across Pleasant and then the next stretch.
It doesn't happen on a daily basis, but I would say like weekends when people are having,
Okay.
a family get together, that kind of
Yep.
thing, that overflow. I mean, I could,
Okay.
happens in my house. I can tell you that.
Right. But I mean, there's always workarounds with that parking
Yep.
slightly farther up, and as Joel suggested, if we move those poles into the green space, that it at least allows
In
the
between.
property owners to gain a little bit more space that perhaps they don't have now.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
certainly it's done a lot. Sure.
I know we have the right of way there, but the fact that we don't put in a lot of sidewalk and we're not dealing with this a lot, I think we need to be really mindful of the neighbors. We've had issues before when we've done things and we haven't contacted neighbors in a timely fashion or removing trees, things like that. And it's always been, a difficult and emotional thing for someone's property to be disturbed. And I understand we have the right of way, but I want to be really sensitive about this if we do decide to go and install this and proceed with this project, because it's, for decades, people or longer who have been living here have had no disturbance on their land, which they can, it is their land, but I just think we need to be really careful about this.
The next one is Gerald, since that's in Gerald.
Okay. Well, this has been terrific, Dan. Thank you and your team very much.
So do we want to have Dan put in what he's working on is the curbing that he suggested down at Thad's, right? As part of his design.
Yeah, let's go back. Can we go back to that slide, Dan, in terms of what your suggestions were? There we go.
Sure, and again, that's conceptual, but what this shows is the radius that would match the radius on the west side of this
Yeah.
intersection. And so it's leaving Thad almost all of his existing pavement, and
Good.
based on the truck turnarounds, which will update, especially with a rolled curb for part of it or a tapered curb, we think he gets 95% of the motion that he'd need for vehicles, the other 5% being the creativity of drivers that we see
Okay.
to be able to
I know.
negotiate areas. And then a flush sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that the curb has to extend beyond the sidewalk on West Street. Once right there, yeah. Having it come back up in between those two spots, I don't see where that's gonna be helpful to us at all.
Well, it's helpful in terms of a safety thing, right? We're narrowing that
He's
sidewalk.
talking about on the
distance.
inside of.
Right.
He's talking
Oh,
about
on the
the
inside.
inside of Thad's.
Oh, no,
No, he's talking from the
From
the curb, between the little green space between West Street and the curb. The
From-
West Street and
from-
the sidewalk. right
From there, that's curbed already.
this is
So-
curbed already right here.
So
Yeah.
continuing that curb to the end of that sidewalk there. But after that, you've got to drop down to accommodate that sidewalk to meet the road.
Yeah.
Then you'd have to come back up and then back down I think that's a lot of, that little section right there, I don't,
Okay,
Sure, in terms of stormwater flow, which is a part of the reason to do this,
Right.
it's this upstream one to the north that's gonna do the bulk of that kind of work. This lower one down was sort of a certain symmetry and to shorten this distance, but certainly this could all be the same flush curb treatment right up to meet the existing or an extended West Street sidewalk. Is that what you're saying? Sort of this flowery looking area can go away and the curbs along with it can go away and we can just focus on something up in this
yeah,
area?
because I don't see, then they would still be able to drive over that
Yeah, sure. That. I'm
Drive over
sure
the
that
one
would
up
give some
towards
thumbs
the
up.
road.
up towards the road. I just don't see it.
So, well, I just asked the question, you see them just cutting that, just driving over the top of the sidewalk.
The curb would be to that corner, so
Oh, there'd be a curb where his.
where the hand is, yeah,
Oh.
and just eliminate that right there.
Oh, okay. I
And
see the
having
curb
that
from
off
the
the
sidewalk out to West Street would be there.
yeah,
Yeah.
So we'd get him over.
Yeah,
And then it'd be
okay.
flush from,
Okay, yes, I see what you're saying.
because that's gotta come down flush to the road there, and then it's gotta be
Right.
flush to the road when it.
okay,
You'd be
yeah, so
going up and
we're
down.
essentially just extending the curb that we have there, and then the left side would be down flush. Now, are we creating with this, I don't remember any water issues there, and we know that we don't have any dry wells there. We're not creating any issues by putting this in, it seems like.
No, and
I think-
Thad reported it in here on his property, in a ways, it sort of washes in, comes on
Okay.
down and sort of turns the corner down into his property.
Okay,
And so that's why this upstream, if you will, solution would be the one that would be, I would say, more necessary from that standpoint. And if we can put in a flush curb to really differentiate the walking surface all the way up and then
Yep.
continue this radius curbed with more
Perfect.
grass here, I think that works nicely.
Okay.
Dan, right where your hand is, with that green space, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Pull it towards the west a little bit. Right out there, could there be a drainage right there between somewhere in there, the last D box, what do you guys want to call them thing, the drainage box? The tie in, drop inlet, so you could tie into the West Street drainage system. That was our talk a few years ago, was when we were going to try to do Munsell on our own, was to tie into the West Street big dig project a few years ago.
We can show it, so it's on paper, and when it comes to designing this, it'll jog
So-
someone's memory and
So
see
when
if
it
it's
comes off
feasible.
this, the water comes off the west side of West Street, or the north side of West Street, right in that area, it would have a place to go.
Well, if
Not in
one
the
go down-
Tad's yard.
Yeah, but won't it go down, and that's the whole point of the flower section to the left,
Up to upper one.
yeah.
Well, it's gotta go uphill and there's a little bit of a incline. It's
Yeah.
it's downhill towards the center of street of West Street. I think the last one right there, a drop inlet would be ideal.
But isn't Thad saying that it's ponding somewhere? Well, you can't see where my cursor is, but yes, right, right where that is.
That's the
So if
area
it's
he
already
pointed to,
ponding
yeah.
there, how is it, I
Well,
can't
we're
remember what you
gonna-
called it.
If our driveway, if our sidewalk is an inch or two higher, it's gonna keep the water out of the road.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd
And-
probably, I mean, when I say flush, there's probably a little bit of an inch and a little bit of a rise. Something down here might still be capturing water that's coming either off West Street itself if it's crowned. Not sure, or elsewhere here down on this part of Munsell Avenue. But we can certainly show it, and that would be something that then would be explored and modeled a little further in construction documentation.
okay. All right. Well, it looks like we're leaning towards number 3, and sort of the changes were a few changes in this area, as well as exploring the potential of moving utility poles into the 4-foot green space, which I guess is a reason why you might not pick or look at using a 3-foot green space. It's sort of, allowing the property owners a little bit more space, but maybe a 4-foot allows them more space by not having utility poles right in the way.
Yeah, that's a great reason. And
Okay.
the reason, I just want to sort of record some of the reasoning for choosing the buffered version. It sounds like, you know, the logistics of plowing is an important one. Cost would be one. Maintaining on-street parking would be one. Opportunity to relocate utility poles further away from houses as opposed to closer to houses potentially. Were there other items that we'd want to at least sort of record either in the minutes or in the report or both as the reasons why that was chosen?
Safety.
Pedestrian further from the street period.
Yeah.
Certainly, yeah.
As well as keeping with the current village sidewalks, the same design.
Okay.
Great.
I'm
Thank you, Dan.
grateful to all your time, and I'm grateful to the folks that are waiting to discuss other business with you. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Let's see.
Thank
if we
you,
can
Dan.
stop. Hey, Dan, can you stop your screen sharing possibility?
Yes, I can.
Or we can,
There you go.
there we go. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I do too. See you.
All right, let's move on in our regular business. Number 2, park use application, outdoor live nativity at the town green on Sunday, December 11th at 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. I think we have some people here.
We do.
We
do. Want us to move?
Fantastic. Thank you for waiting. Very
We
appreciated.
could make you come up to the table.
Come up to the table. Our camera is limited tonight, so let's have you come up if you're able to do that. All right. Thank you very much.
As I noted in my report, this year's application was a little bit light on details. So I presumed that many of the things from last year were carrying over to this year. I
Yeah,
don't
we
know if
actually
that's
just-
factual.
Yeah, we just changed the names and the date on last year's thing, so I guess I assumed everything carried over, but I guess not. What do you need to know?
How many fire pits?
4 at the most?
Okay.
And what, we had conditions last year. Do you know any reason we can't use the same conditions?
Actually, the minutes show that Joel approved the fire pits. And that was it.
I thought
With
they
no
told us they were
conditions.
gonna have a fire extinguisher on hand.
Yeah,
Yep.
each fire pit, and they'd be cleaning up after all the animals when they were done.
I'll make a
What was the
motion.
attendance? What was the attendance last year?
Well, last year it was closer to 200. In the past, it's been under 100. So I know there was a note on the permit saying under 100, you had fire approval, but I don't know what that means for over 100. Does that mean we have to do something different? We communicated with the fire department.
You talked to Brett.
Yeah, I think if you've talked to Brett, I think that's, and he's
Yeah.
approved
And
it.
there's
I think that's
also-
fine.
Yeah, there's also not 200 people there at once. They sort of go,
Wondering.
they go
Right,
through,
right.
they travel.
From 1
through
to
the
6, you had
space.
200 people.
2 to 4.
2 to 4. Oh, it says 1 to 6 here.
That's Well,
Oh, using
So
the car.
3 to
Okay.
4 is the actual time the public is
Okay.
there. The rest of the time is just
Clean up.
us. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's hope you have as good as attendance as you did last year. I mean, I think people are anxious to get to events, given what's
Mhm.
happened in the last few years. So that's great. You'll be providing with a certificate of insurance for the event.
Yeah, so who do we get that to? We have a couple insurance forms from a couple different churches.
Yep,
Right, yeah,
with the town listed as
Yeah, Meredith.
additional insured.
And just make it out to I guess it's town of Bristol, correct? As additional insured.
Additional insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then get it to Meredith.
Yep, we have the animals. Let's see, what else? And it's on both sides of the sidewalk. Oh, and then you were asking about the sidewalks being sanded, which I think was probably done last year by the road crew. Is that correct, Eric?
It depended on
Remember-
how much snow we got. I
Right.
remember
We didn't have any snow, right?
Well, I know, that's what I'm
No,
saying,
okay.
when Eric said that depends on how much snow we get, if we're out plowing, he's not gonna be able to get down there to sand.
Right, and I think we had left it that if there was ice that day, we would take care of it. It wasn't something people had to go out for especially
Yeah.
for us.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as that's approved for us to do.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully if there's snow on the ground, it would have been plowed on the Friday.
Yeah. you can
Potentially,
fit that through the- With the 450.
So if you had to run over, you'll have the sander on that, so if it had to be sanded, you could buzz down through and sand it with that.
Yeah, and I just have to put sand in it, and normally I'm gonna keep salt in it.
Yeah. Well, you could use salt, I don't,
Yeah, I mean, I can, the spinner on that, we can turn it so just barely
salt would probably be better, it'd be less cleanup.
less cleanup, and it would keep the ice away longer than straight sand.
That sounds
As
good.
long as we got a plan, I mean.
Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
just as far as it's icy, you can just call me and I can come in and hit it with a pickup. Like Peter was saying, just drive down through and salt the sidewalk.
Alright,
If it, if it happens to be a cold day, nice day, but it's icy. I can just come in and hit it with that rather than having to get the tractor out and then we can go down and do it.
I'll show you full of spring buckets and shovels.
Yeah, I can do that too.
You're gonna have bucket
Great.
and shovels anyway.
Yeah, but you don't want to be spreading out on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Or we don't want them spreading out on the sidewalk. Probably keep you from slipping, maybe not.
Okay. Do you
Okay.
need a motion, Val, or is this just gonna be approved?
Yeah, well, this is an approval of a permit, so yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the park use application for the line activity on the town green for on Sunday, December 11th from 1 to 6.
With the conditions being notify the fire chief,
They already did that, right? Notify the fire chief, fire
clean up
extinguishers
after
at the
themselves.
fire pits and cleaning up.
And insurance.
Insurance.
Right.
And insurance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. All those against, nay. Motion carries. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Awesome.
Ladies?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you for
What?
waiting.
Yes, thank you for
Sorry it
waiting.
took so long.
We just love talking about sidewalks.
We have a salt sand mix, 50-50 blend. So if you guys wanted, some pale. But I'm hoping. We got some pale, we can fill up for you and take it down and drop it by the band stand. You just wanna have, some couple on hand or whatever. Just let me know. Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Item 3, grant authorization request for approximately $43,000 from the Vermont Department of Homeland Security to replace 4 older mobile radios and vehicle repeaters. I assume Bruce
Yes.
is still here. There he is.
Yes, this
All
is
right.
the same grant process that we received the award to replace our portable radios 2 years ago. We attempted to replace the mobile radios last year, but we were unsuccessful. So we're attempting to do that again. They're as old as the portables were. They are in need of replacement. So we're hopeful this time around. I mean, Josh did a great job with the application, but I just think that with the number of agencies requesting funding, we just missed out last year. So we'd like to try it again.
No match.
It depends so much on the other competition.
No match here, no. Better. How long before they go digital, Bruce, or are you even worried about that?
They have digital capabilities now, but the cost would be even more than what, the cost for these would be.
I'm just asking because I thought the state police were all going all digital but they're not gonna be able to if other agencies they want to communicate with, they'll still have to have both.
They should have both, or they just won't talk to us.
Maybe that's their point.
That's a possibility. There are a few agencies up that have digital, but I just don't. I think for us, if we can replace the ones that we have, and then if it goes digital, another 4 or 5 years, try to replace them with digital, then that's when we try it then.
Okay.
Yes,
Just that just what I heard, and I wanted to make sure that that wasn't what you needed.
I would prefer digital, but
They're digital.
What's
Tax
the,
rules.
what is the cost of 4 repeaters and 4 older mode? If it was digital, just off the top of your head.
I don't have those costs.
50
I
radio.
just know it's more.
I mean, if you were saying, oh, I could have done it for $5,000 more. Would that be-
We're awaiting the updated cost, so I will ask them to give us the cost for digital capability.
Yeah. Make a motion, we authorize the chief to apply for it.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 4, grant authorization request for up to $20,000 through the Better Roads Grant Program to widen and stone line Notch Road. Eric and Val.
To do the one that we didn't do last.
Oh, from the High Bridge down.
From where we stopped stoning on the Notch Road to the top. I can't do it with our machine, it's too small, so
So you're going up, not up and down.
we're headed up
Up
the
the
Notch, up the paved part of Notch Road.
From about, no,
From
from,
Allen Rathburn's road.
Oh, from there, okay.
yeah, from, what's his name?
Jimmy
Schroeder's.
Schroeder's, okay.
From
Fred's.
Schroeder's, Fred Schroeder's up around the
Okay.
corner.
Yeah, I
Okay.
keep- when I think of the Notch Road, I think of beyond that.
You're
I'm
thinking of the upper
upper
notch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just thinking.
I was
"Do
thinking-
that?"
And I gotta get updated estimates. Josh, I called him. He's just gonna update what he gave us last time. Steven, I talked to him. He's gonna go actually look at it again and get me one, and then I just hand them the mic. And he'll submit it. I'm just gonna use the same pictures and stuff that we had before.
Make a motion, we authorize for 20,000 through the Better Roads.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Right,
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. All righty. Item 5, grant authorization request for funds through the Better Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, BRIC, to update Bristol's hazard mitigation plan.
Thank you. It turns out that my sense of confusion was validated, that a lot of other communities also were confused about this, partly because we received approval, just like last year, the 2021 authorization that the select board approved last year was the application. Submitting that grant commitment or the match commitment form apparently was the application, although that was not exactly clear. And also we were told to wait for additional information, which didn't come. And apparently the reason why it didn't come was because FEMA had not authorized the funding yet and still hasn't. And so while we are in the queue or approved to proceed with updating the hazard mitigation plan, this BRIC program, as I outlined in my notes and on the sheet there, that it can be used for scoping study as a separate application, and which would be a 2022 application. Same thing, 75-25% match. And I was having trouble coming up with a specific flood-related resiliency project quickly that we could apply a scoping study for. But it occurred to me that the Mountain Street culvert that by the elementary school that would overflow frequently and run down Spring Street and flood properties and make a mess, that we did apply through the local roads program, Better Roads program, through VTrans, and did not get funded. But there we have a project, we have a proposed scope, or at least a plan. And it was a very back of the napkin plan, quite frankly. And perhaps we could use this funding to better scope out that project for something that's more, I don't know, fundable.
Okay.
And successful. That would be
Okay.
successful. So that's my thought, unless anybody else has other suggestions about other projects that would relieve alleviate flooding in a particular area. I thought about Pine Street and the stormwater issues there, but we might be on another track to deal with that. And this scoping study would just add more time to getting that done.
I mean, is the Mountain Street, is that still an issue, Eric? How is that? I know you did a little bit of work over there, but what's the status of that?
Well, fortunately, we haven't had any major rains that tested it. And I believe the Public Works Office Department did install a modified grate to try to deal with the debris buildup that would help,
Right,
help
that's
to
right. It
create
was
the flooding.
fairly minimal in terms of the work that was done.
Right. The plan that Alan Heinziger had proposed at that time was to lengthen the channel going up the street, and I don't remember all the other details, but a scoping study would figure that out.
Okay. Did people in the town offices get that? I know you had some technical difficulties there. Potentially more technical difficulties. Hello, can you hear us?
No, I don't think they're hearing us.
No, I think something's happening with that
Yeah.
laptop maybe.
Oh,
Oh,
there we
they're
go.
back on.
Yes, the
Now they're-
laptop died.
Then you.
Oh, the laptop.
Oh, no. So do I have to say that all again?
Great. So how much
I
did you
mean,
hear?
there's probably an 8-foot sump in there, so it can hold a lot, and then,
Hang on, we're trying to get TV switched over.
and then if you get, you get a big, you just have Psy or Senasac or whoever go up and suck it out,
No.
but you've alleviated the
All that
plugging.
All that sticks going
Put
in,
this back in his office.
gets halfway down Spring Street, starts.
Yeah.
How we
I know
doing?
that Russ Luke, who lives right there, and Ernie end up going up and hauling
Oh,
out that
that's
area quite
Right.
regularly during heavy
Yeah,
rain,
that is a valid point.
because I hear about it.
Okay. All
But
right.
we didn't manage to get Town of Bristol off his ID before he went dead. And we don't know his password, so.
All right, he can do that. He'll spot that hopefully. How much did you hear about that? It was Val's suggestion in terms of using the money to do a scoping study for the Mountain Street water issues. What do people feel about that?
We've got a problem there,
Yeah.
Right.
no doubt about it.
Okay.
Why you gotta put it in front of me?
Okay. I mean, it's.
Back so you can see
I
Eric.
think that's a good Val. I think that's a good use of funds to study that and try to get improvements done there, or at least a study to have improvements done. I don't know of any other projects that are high on the list in terms of flooding areas.
Well,
Right.
no, yeah, okay, not flooding, but have we done a scoping study, I mean, Peter and Eric and I and a few of us have talked about how we think we can do Munsell Avenue with drainage. But does that have to be studied to get any money for it? You know, the drainage that we just want to do a sidewalk, but we want to
Right.
also to do the sidewalk, we want to do drainage on Munsell Avenue. To get
Yeah,
into
is that a
money, we're gonna have to
potential?
have a study done, are we?
Is that a potential for that for the stormwater on Munsell? Could this money be used to provide plans for that, or at least?
I mean, I would argue that stormwater is an issue there, because I've been back when Merle Merle Knight lived in the house where Tim O'Toole is now. I've been there when there was 2 foot of water in the road, because he was thinking that maybe there was a water break. And it was stormwater, the drain, everything was froze.
I mean, if you can only use one project, I think this, to protect the school, and that drain up there is more important. Wouldn't you think?
Okay.
Munsell Avenue.
Well, I would say that, and the property damage that's occurred there before.
Anyways, the drains that we want to put in, we don't actually have to have a scoping study to put the drains in.
That's true.
For Munsell, so Eric, you know what needs to be done for Munsell.
He knows what he wants.
I know what I want.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. I mean, but I think so it sounds like, I think Val's suggestion is a good one in terms of looking at the Mountain Street and the potential to fix the water issues there.
I mean, we have for as far as Munsell goes, we have the 3 dry wells and the plan that Eric has in mind.
Okay.
We just have to figure out how we're going to tie into West Street.
Okay.
And the elevations.
It's all downhill.
It's all downhill.
All right. So what's the dollar amount, Val, in terms of
Well,
what are we looking at?
Well, good question. I just looked up the V-Trans application, and that at the time was an application for $37,000. That was for implementation.
Okay.
Total project. But again, that was kind of a back of the napkin proposal. So a scoping study might not be a bad idea to clarify what should be done there.
Okay. And so for this grant, what's the match? And then what would we ask for?
Right, it's still a 75, so it's up to $20,000, I think. Again, it's unclear because I have not, well, I was emailed the paper application form, but I haven't had a chance to open it. So, but it's
I'll
still,
move that we apply for up to $20,000 to do a study on the Mountain Street stormwater infrastructure.
All righty.
When we did the.
Yeah, but it's not working.
Yeah, because they didn't change anything, Michelle, where it goes in, where it feeds it.
The
Yeah.
pipe,
did do the work?
They
all the
did-
wa-
they
all the
did
pipe is in the
foundations and
ground.
stuff in,
it's
but-
the collection system is not working.
Right.
Yeah.
The
It's
one
the
where,
V, you know, that collection,
East driveway is. That one right
The one you
there.
always have to clean out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not working.
Okay, no, I was thinking about the stuff that we had talked about putting behind the school, the big, you
Oh,
know,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Oh, no.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we don't need a scope-
We're
scoping
doing
study for that.
Study for that.
Okay.
So
one
we
of the
had-
things I recall that Alan Heinziger had mentioned back then was that, so there were some undersized pipes that needed to be replaced, I think is what part of the problem was, if I'm recalling correctly.
The issue up there shouldn't be undersized pipes. It's just a matter of the drainage plugs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
All right.
I'll second Peter's motion. We didn't get a second.
Okay.
One of
Thank you.
these driveway features should be bigger.
Yeah.
All right. So we have
The
a
other ones are the other ones are good. It's just the one feeding it,
So
The one
Okay.
going under their
going
driveway.
under their driveway.
that's a 2-footer.
That's
Okay.
no, not even a 2-footer.
Used to be a
That's
30-inch crush because I put that in there the
right,
first
and
time.
it's a cement culvert now, and I don't believe that's 2 foot there. I think it's a little less than that.
Because
All right.
when
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
when to answer Eric's question, when Corkins built that house up there, they had to have a stormwater survey done, and the 100-year flood, and I remember putting a 30-inch squash culvert in there because I remember how excited they were about what it cost for that culvert. And it sounds like they put a smaller culvert in there when they redid the system.
Okay.
But Valerie, part of the scoping study would probably run a camera down in there and find
Yeah.
out where the 3-foot culvert begins when Munson did the big dig back in 2008, and that was shovel ready. If you remember.
Yeah, that was all done. That was all
All
changed.
up to that flat culvert or
Yeah.
wherever it crossing that driveway.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're talking about a culvert there plus a new collection, so containment area. I think that's what.
Okay.
That's what plugs the containment area, right? The grate that you have to unbolt
The
and
grate that we have to pull up and
Pull the
that
weed-
area right there.
pull the wood out of it and the sticks.
Wonder if they could put some sort of centrifuge in there that would get rid of all the garbage and let the water go down.
That might not be a
That'd be
bad-
nice. All right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Alternatives. All right. Good. Any further discussion on this? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
All right.
Aye.
Thank
All
you.
those against, nay. Motion carries.
Excellent.
All right. Item 6, American Rescue Plan Act funding update.
I do not have anything new to report since the last meeting, unless you do, Ian.
Nope. Next meeting will be
On the 5th at 6:30 or 5:30,
5:30.
just preceding the select board meeting.
similar to the last meeting.
Did Middlebury College get taken care of? Because I got like 3 more requests for response, and I saw Michelle's response, and
I answered the survey. I mean,
it was hard to answer the survey because there were spots where I wanted to put a comment in, and I couldn't. You had to choose something. It's like, I don't really want to choose that. I don't really want to choose that, but I
Right.
had to.
That's
I had
fine.
to make a choice.
I haven't done the interview yet, but I will. I need to set up time. I wasn't able to do it the other last
Darla
week.
did the survey too.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I did. I actually spoke to one of the students, and it was a pretty brief interview. It was pretty, very similar to the survey, but
Okay.
you had the opportunity to have a little dialogue. And I did tell them, Ian, over and over, it was my opinion that I was offering, not the board's opinion, and that you would be
Right.
the contact.
Okay, yep, that's fine. I'm going to reach out to them this week. Okay, what's next on our list here? Review and approval of September 14th, September 26th, November 7th, and November 14th meeting minutes.
We have the November 7th.
Okay.
Those
And
are
then
the
we have a
ones I
chance to look
did
at
right
those.
already, Val.
Yeah, those are the ones that Michelle edited.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll
So
make
maybe
a motion
approval.
we approve November 7th minutes with the minor changes I had.
Second.
Okay. Motion the second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. And then we'll work on the new other minutes for next meeting.
Yes,
Or
indeed.
potentially next meeting after that.
Yeah.
Item 8, authorize accounts payable warrant and any liquor licenses.
We're going to get them.
We didn't bring them in
We
tonight.
didn't bring them in.
Okay.
Peter and I were doing IT stuff. We couldn't get it fixed.
But they're right on the counter, right? To
Yeah,
sign
I'm
on
sure
the
they
counter.
are. Michelle's gone to get them.
Oh,
Okay. And we're not really signing them. We're just taking a look at them. The warrant amount was $2,386,008.57.
Yeah, I have a quick question, Val, and I don't know if you'll know the answer to this. Why do we have 2 entries for Holly Hall fuel and 3 entries for truck tank fuel?
They deliver weekly.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, for our tank, this time of year, they'll come once a week.
Okay.
And I only know that because that was on my route when I worked there.
Is there anything that you haven't done in this town, Baker?
or don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot I don't know. Like
All
why
right.
I'm here.
So what are any liquor licenses or anything like that? Michelle, did you find anything?
What's that?
Any liquor licenses?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. And I read the warrant. All right. Let's continue. Number 9, Select Board Roundtable. Michelle.
I think I'm good.
Okay. Joel.
You say me?
Yes.
I had something, I forget it wasn't that important, so nothing.
Okay. Darla.
You're
I'm
muted.
good for this evening.
All right. And finally, Peeker.
I am good.
And I am good as well. Item 10, Town Administrator's Report. Val, anything to add?
Yes, as Michelle and Ian are aware, the V-Trans will finally be turning their attention to the bridge lights near Lincoln Road. They expect to send they expect to send a technician out this week to get them taken care of.
And I
Great.
emailed Dan and told him which only light was working.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
I hope they look at both bridges
The other two.
and the lights on the bridges, so just to
And I-
make sure.
And I did throw in a plug about needing a conversation about the replacement of that other missing lamp.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so maybe there's been some change in personnel at V-Trans and some, new
Right.
eyes and new ways of thinking where they might be able to figure out how to replace it. If that model is even available anymore.
Okay, thank you. Other business, correspondence reports, correspondence received. We have a few things, right, Val?
There are a number of items listed. Let's see.
I asked Sharon this week, last week.
Garfield Street Road
Right of way.
This
yeah.
application was approved for going under the sidewalk for electrical stuff installation. Received a letter from Beckwith Mountain about from Lee Beckwith about Mountain Terrace plowing. Eric has addressed a lot of those concerns.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, off screen.
Okay.
I included an article from the Addison Independent about Bristol Hub extending their hours and adding
Yep.
programs. And there's the Addison County November newsletter, Regional Planning Commission newsletter.
Terrific. Okay.
And the road over the mountain's open
And
again.
the road over the mountain, I heard.
No kidding. Oh my God.
Thought I'd let you know that, Valerie.
Oh my God. This morning was pretty dicey, I'll tell you. Phew. And I wish I had my dash cam going because by the time I got to the top and people were going down, people clearly did not have their snow tires on yet because you could see the slippy slides all over the road. And somebody hit the guardrail and it's like, oh. So fortunately I have studded snows on now, but other people clearly did not. So I made it over okay, but slowly.
Well, I drove up that mountain once, almost at the top, and started to spin. I was with my family. My mother was in the back seat.
Oh.
And her response to the car sliding and spinning was to, I think I'm going to get out now. And so she attempted to get out of the car, which we quickly said, don't do that. And so then we turned around and went back home. But yeah,
You made it the worst part, Ian.
Yeah, the
No,
other
I know.
side's always better.
Not so bad.
Well, the funny
Yeah.
thing is this morning going down, I pass a lot more people going up towards the other side, and they were going really fast. And I wish I could have been there when they hit all that slippery stuff to see what happened up there. I didn't see any like broken car parts in the road where they smashed, but I could only imagine that was not going to be good.
time for you to get your portable flying device to just fly over the gap.
Fortunately, VTrans has that nice webcam near the top where you can check in and see how things are looking, whether it's clear or goopy. But sometimes the webcam itself is goopy, so you really can't tell.
Although Beulah Score doesn't get Starksboro, it gets, who does Beulah Score? Like Vermont State Police has to come out of Williston to do it. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
take
because
care of it.
it's
Chittenden County.
County, yeah.
Yeah, because they come down to, the hell's that road? Little Bob Halls.
Huntsville,
Hanksville.
Hanksville, they come down
Hanksville.
there, that's where they turn around.
Valerie, the VTUMS bills aren't in here, but it's on the list. And
I can't, I don't know what to say about that.
And VLCT property casualty one isn't in here either. I just wanted to look at a couple of bills and they're not in here. So just food for thought.
Yeah, Sharon wasn't in today, so,
Sharon probably did that.
and I wasn't in Friday.
Wait a minute, you're in a different folder now. Here they are. Sorry.
By the way, I want to thank Ian for the many times when I've asked him to post the agendas when I wasn't able to be in on Fridays for whatever reason. And he has done that very well, and I thank him for that.
Of course.
Very
My
upset
pleasure.
that you didn't ask me to do it.
All right, I'll add you to the list.
I want to see. If he
Please
can do
don't,
it.
Say.
please don't.
We'd still be waiting for them to be posted.
We did have
Don't be
another.
telling secrets that you know. Just let it go.
Sorry.
We did have another correspondence thing, which isn't in this, which was from Josh Turner with regard to a resident and the crosswalk at School Street and
Oh,
Park.
right.
I don't know if we want to just forward that to the select board.
Sure.
He spoke to a resident, Mr. Marsh, who expressed concern about the extended length and positioning of the crosswalk, and that's essentially the one that connects directly to the sidewalk coming off of the park and going all the way across to School Street right there. So he said vehicles traveling on the one-way do not have the
You're talking
obligation
the
to stop
diagonal one?
currently, and parked vehicles cut the line of sight quite a lot. Mr. Marsh recalled a few near misses in the crosswalk for himself going from his house on School Street to the green. And then Josh said he can attest as someone who drives through there a handful of times a day, it often feels like a person or vehicle will suddenly appear from behind an obstruction. Mr. Marsh proposed either eliminating some parking in that area to open up sight lines, changing the crosswalk location, or erecting a stop sign at the T intersection to require vehicles to stop and check their surroundings. He is aware that those are longer term solutions. However, in the short term, he requested one of the pedestrian crossing signs for the crosswalk next spring, which is the ones that sit in the middle of the road. Josh said he mentioned he would bring those ideas to our attention, and I will forward that email to you.
Thank you
board
very much,
members.
Ian, for catching that. Yeah.
Didn't there used to be a stop sign on that?
I thought there used to be, right by the old bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, used to be a stop sign there.
Boy, it has, must been a long time, because I don't remember stop sign.
It would need to be listed in the traffic ordinance in order
You
to be
don't-
there
you don't
and
remember that?
enforceable.
No, I don't.
But I
Okay.
mean, the sign for this old school, high school is a blockage there. And then people park, they have the 2 parking spots in front of
Yep.
the crosswalk. And a lot of people park in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
How big a deal would it be? What do we have to do to put a stop sign there?
See if it's in the traffic ordinance first, if it's already there. And if not, then the traffic ordinance would need to be amended to include it in order for it to be enforceable.
You would also have to eliminate at least 1 parking space, or possibly 2 for
both.
site.
What's the possibility of,
Okay.
what's the possibility where the sidewalk ends? You know, the diagonal one going through the park where it ends right there, it hits the pavement, do a directly across the street, go right across the street, right towards
The bell.
the bell. The old bell was there.
Valerie and I are actually talked about that.
Back
today.
farther. You mean
Yeah,
back farther.
Eric and I met this morning and talked
diagonal-
about that very thing.
Because
Yeah,
the diagonal
you
goes
would-
right up towards the Catholic Church's house. But
Right, but you'd still lose at least 1 parking space.
Yes, yes.
Bruce, I think you'd actually lose 3.
Okay,
You lose both parallel, and then you lose the
First one.
diagonal one right there beside the park.
parking is a premium.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
Would
think that's
eliminate
probably why they
spaces.
did it diagonal. 'Cause
Yeah.
we weren't gonna
Yeah.
lose any.
So when it goes diagonal, where does it go to? To the sidewalk
The
in
end
front
of
of
the sidewalk,
at the end of the church?
at the end,
Yeah.
at
By
the
the
end.
church?
Yeah, by
at the
sign.
church. Yeah.
So
By the
how about
rectory.
Old high school sign.
how about can we head straight across to the
Straight west?
Yeah,
Then you
and
still
hit that
lose
sidewalk over there.
2.
Straight west. And you mean across
Towards
but
the church.
to the church?
Yeah.
Not there, across that way.
Yeah, can it go straight
Now,
that
the
way?
side, but the sidewalk ends on a diagonal, because it
Yeah,
goes around here, so,
yeah,
and so if
we-
you go
That's
straight
right.
across.
See,
We do some creative
Right.
striping.
my thought, here's this, and it
Goes around.
and this way. You go just like
There you
that,
go, right there.
just like that.
Yeah.
Because this side
Yeah.
is coming down
On
through
TV.
here. Yeah, you see,
Holy smoke, that is long.
Yeah. My thought
Yeah.
would go straight
Right.
across towards the,
right behind that second car.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
right
you
here.
have to lose, I would say lose both of the parallel.
That's a,
Well, no,
that's,
you wouldn't lose this one on the end, I don't think, because you've got that,
So you got the, yeah.
green
it's gotta
space?
be- I can't remember the footage, but right there where the hash marks are,
yeah,
there's a car that parks right where that purple is.
Yeah.
Where she, right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And if you went straight across there.
Right there, that's where I want to go.
yeah, well, that's what I
You'd
was
have to be
thinking.
so many feet away from that crosswalk.
So is the.
but being it's
the
one
end of the
way,
driveway- The end of the sidewalk is
Oh,
about
that's
right
true.
here, right?
Right,
Yep.
So you would go across,
Yep.
Yep.
so we'd lose these two.
Yeah.
no, I don't think.
why would you lose those?
Maybe only this one,
You gotta
maybe
have
not.
So many feet.
It's
away
one
from-
way.
Away from a car, it doesn't matter. You still gotta have your same footage.
Well, maybe we could,
See, I was thinking, yeah, lay it just like this.
well, can we crowd that? Can we crowd, if we eliminate that crosswalk, if we eliminate that diagonal crosswalk, can we slide that parking spot ahead?
Yeah, you could slide them both ahead as long as you don't go beyond where the cars are parking on School Street.
Yeah,
And maybe we only end up
So-
losing one.
You might not lose any of them, Beaker. Cause if you slide that first car, say, put it around to the front, right there,
Mhm.
that's not gonna be farther than School Street, so the cars are still gonna be able to get up and down School Street. And then you go straight across, you're gonna have your footage.
Yeah, but then you
Probably
enter,
lose any spacing other than
So it could go.
maybe the one where it comes out of the park.
okay, Bruce?
well, if you move that parking space forward, then you interfere with visibility coming
That's
south.
what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Make it just as
Oh.
bad.
About just
yeah.
losing one,
You're right.
losing the second car.
Visibility,
No, visibility coming
Coming
out,
down
coming
School
down
Street.
from,
Right.
from the gym.
How about you just
Well,
move
who
that,
are we?
how about just moving the gray car, or that one right there, and going right across about where that white line is behind that gray car, come right back over. Yep, right there, Ian, right back over to the crosswalk.
Yeah, if you could do that and lose only just that
One
one spot.
Or, and you said possibly this last
Possibly, yeah,
diagonal one.
possibly the one on the diagonal.
Or you could shove that down far enough so you didn't.
Not if you want to connect it to the sidewalk. Cause that's where the sidewalk comes out, is right there where the.
Right there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right
That's
there
where
to
the
there.
sidewalk comes onto the street.
yeah.
I know there's potential. So a couple questions. Is the parking spots, are those the towns or the property owners?
I'd expect it's the towns, because that's the town's right of way.
Okay. So there's potential to put electric vehicle charging. I've talked to Tom Wells about this. Green Mountain Power is interested in putting in the more expensive fast charging. It needs 3-phase. And initially, Tom and I had talked about in the old Sprout House back there, but there isn't 3-phase over there. It's not as publicly visible too, and Green Mountain Power kind of wants to make them public visible. Tom is interested in potentially exploring it for those 2 spaces right there, allowing the charging units. Well, I say that to be on his property, but I realize now it's you're going across the sidewalk, so that's actually not going to work.
Right.
So scratch
Well, if
that.
he'd let us put 2 parking spots on the other side of the sidewalk, it'd
Jim,
be win-win all the way around.
you have a question, Jim?
You have to cross the sidewalk.
Sure. How many people have been hit with cars there? We're worrying about one complaint, and you're gonna go through all of this for one complaint? I mean, like you
I'm sure
said,
his isn't the only complaint, Jimmy.
What's
Yeah,
that?
it's
I'm sure he's not the only one that has complained.
Yeah, but have the police department had any complaints about it other than that one? You know,
I know it's been scary when
had
I've
any
come across
accidents.
it
How about-
sometimes.
How about we have Valerie explore, go back through some of the old trustees minutes and see if there was a I remember a stop sign.
I remember a stop
I remember a stop
I do
sign
too,
there.
guys, yeah.
I would just have to look in the ordinance to
There was
see
a
if
while
it
ago.
was ever
Maybe if there's
there.
an ordinance that has a stop sign there, we just reapply it.
If you put the stop sign in, you still have to lose the parking spots, don't you?
Between now and the 12th, I'm not going to be looking through trustees minutes.
No.
no.
Yeah, well.
No, I mean, I don't think we need to
Anyway.
spend a lot of time on this. I think a change like this is fairly easy to implement. I do think the safety is important. I'll add my complaints to this sidewalk because it is dangerous. Cars do come through there, and I agree with the gentleman who talked to Josh that sight lines are difficult here with the parking and with the length of that sidewalk. So I think if we can find an amenable solution to be able to improve it and go straight across or put a stop sign in, I think that's a useful thing to do.
Mhm.
Just as a related topic, hopefully by the next meeting, I'm hoping to be able to have an agenda item about bus shelters. The town of Bristol has been gifted 3 bus shelters
Great.
to locate from the design school in Waitsfield. What's it called? Yestermorrow.
Yes, tomorrow.
Right.
Ah.
They've already been designed and built. They're coming from Yestermorrow. They're not exactly conventional. So I have
Good.
not yet contacted this site is one of the potential locations for
Okay.
one of the bus shelters, whether right here or right here. I have not contacted either property owner about their potential interest, and other topics would be maintenance agreement, liability agreements, and whether there's a template that might exist that we could use.
That's not our property, so it's really First Baptist Church.
Oh, I know. Same thing. And with the wells for this site and the church on this site, because this is the bus stop. So it would be very convenient for there would be a bus shelter here or there.
So when you mean unconventional, what do you mean it's gonna look like?
Just different.
Good. I think that's exciting.
Yeah. And the other thought that Chris Pearlie and I came up with was down by on the corner of Lover's Lane and 116, where the cluster of uses are, the apartments, the daycare and other things going on there. Whoops. So
How about between, it stops right in front of Shaw's, right between Shaw's and the backside of Brooks.
well, actually, that was the third site on that blank wall of Walgreens, actually.
Yeah, the trucks go in there to deliver.
But there's a blank wall along the sidewalk where they try to grow flowers, but really haven't, or plants.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
Nothing's
kind of
been
really a
successful.
dead zone. So it would be the perfect size and spot for a bus shelter. perhaps.
Unconventional bus stop.
Yeah.
Great.
So
I
anyway,
want to
great.
see them.
And that,
yes.
that was one of our ARPA. A lot of people had suggested that, so that's great. We can knock
Exactly.
that off of that list.
but
Fantastic.
it'll require the property owner's interest in doing this.
Yeah.
So, and I have not reached out to any of them. So if they're watching this tonight, now they're notified.
Well, I'm sure Tom, Tom Wells and Carol are fairly amenable. I mean, if he's interested in doing public charging, I think having a bus shelter there, the First Baptist Church.
Cursor is there. That's still the Baptist Church. They own
Okay.
almost
Baptist Church, I know that
almost to
people
the
usually.
bell.
Yeah.
They usually stand on the church steps, especially if it's raining. So I feel that, hopefully we'd have support for that.
Yeah,
either
having a
side
shelter.
to be able to accommodate that and be
So
able to
this
keep.
is the Baptist church property right here.
A considerable
Probably, yeah.
amount of it there, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So
That'll make
maybe it's
easier.
just one property owner, and then
Yeah.
obviously we talked to Parmelo for
Right.
the that's probably the most complicated area to put it in, just because of the amount of trucks and stuff that are moving around there and cars. It's
Right.
not as well as designed, unfortunately. That's great news.
Yeah. So hopefully
Okay.
I'll have more information for you at the next meeting.
Okay, and I'll forward that email, and maybe we can we can make it a PDF and put it on the website, Val, under other correspondence just for this meeting.
Okay.
All right. We don't have executive session, so I think we've come
Oh,
to the
one other
end.
footnote, before we had this meeting and we were trying to coordinate the 6:30 executive session and communications about a special Zoom link. I texted texted Michelle that there was a separate Zoom link, but she never got it because I inadvertently sent it to a different Michelle.
Is she joining us for
Whoops.
tonight?
I doubt it. So anyway, yeah, because I didn't text the other Michelle what the Zoom link was, just that I intended to text our Michelle that I just sent it a new Zoom link, but she never got it. So
Well, that's good.
so that just added to the complications.
All right.
So we're gonna try for the 5th, for that executive session at 6:30.
If
If
Chris is available.
yeah.
Okay.
I just noticed on this,
Or
This-
potentially 6 if we need more time.
yeah, if he's available, if others are available. I just noticed on the Zoom, there's Park Place, Park Street, Park Place, Park Street. Well,
I don't
that validates my confusion also. Remember
Yeah,
earlier,
doesn't know.
earlier times, I would say, whatever it's called.
Right. Google doesn't know either.
All right, I'll stop share.
All right. How about a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Adjourn.
Second.
There we go. All those in
Aye,
favor?
aye, aye, aye.
Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and I'll do some troubleshooting on the OWL tomorrow.
Michelle.
Bye, everyone.
Night, see you
All right.
next
Thanks,
week.
Jimmy.
Put this out.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Peter.
Hang on.
I know you.